Good morning. My name is Rob Clyde, and I'm one of the presenters today. With me is Pam Nigro. A very quick introduction for myself. As you can see, I'm a little later in my career, but I've been doing cybersecurity for over 40 years. Started out as a developer. I was the CTO of Symantec for many, many years, and I now serve on a number of boards and also advisors to various companies, such as Shard Secure. In fact, I think they left off all of the ones, but I see one of my friends from Shard Secure is actually here today. Kind of reached a little different point in my career where I've had the opportunity now to rub shoulders with lots of execs, great organizations. The one I'm really proud of, and that I'm here today talking about some of the things we've done, is an association called ISACA. And Pam will introduce a little bit more about ISACA, but I'm on the board of directors for ISACA and a former chair. And Pam?
I'm Pam Nigro. I am the current chair for ISACA, and my career has not been quite as long as Rob's, but in the same type of field of technology. Started out in auditing and have transitioned on into cybersecurity. So we're really here and very proud to be part of the ISACA family representing today. My current role, I am the vice president of security for MedDecision. And there we go.
So there's the disclaimer. Not going to read it. I think you've seen it a million times by this point.
Okay, so we're just going to take some time and walk through digital trust. ISACA has come up with a concept and a framework that we'll talk about around digital trust. We'll be walking you through some of the research that we've done and just a little bit about ISACA. We're about 170,000 members in over 200 countries, and so we have chapters all around the world, and it's really, the research comes from all of these different members around the world. And so also wanted to talk a little bit about our concept, right? Our definition of digital trust. How do we define that? What does that mean? And we convened this global group to come together to really kind of hash out some of these common, sorry.
Clicker stopped working.
Okay,
that's okay.
Hash out these common themes. And one of the things that we think is most important is that it's really about the confidence, right? Digital trust is the confidence in the relationship and the transactions. That's what's really key. It's in the relationship and the transaction among the providers and the consumers in the digital ecosystem. And this is all peoples in the organizations. It's not just a cybersecurity team or an audit team. It has to incorporate everyone within an organization.
So let's think a little bit about what makes something trustworthy. And I think for most of us, I'm including myself in this category as long history in cybersecurity, we naturally immediately go to the item right there that says security and privacy. But if you think about what makes something trustworthy, it's way more than just the technology. I almost cringe to have to say that as a technologist, but it is. There are lots of other things we have to think about, and I want you to think about organizations that you feel confident doing business with digitally and why. And while the security and privacy that you believe is underneath it is important, there's also things like quality. Is it a delight to use? Go beyond just that it's functional, but is it actually a delightful experience? Availability. When you need it, it's there. And it works quickly, and you don't have to sit there waiting for it with something spinning. Ethics and integrity is really important. You believe in the organization. You believe that they'll take care of you. Little things like if you need to talk to a person, there actually is a way to do so. You probably don't want to have to do it, but if it's impossible to talk to someone, usually the trustworthiness goes down. So people become quite important. Transparency and honesty is really critical as well. And that includes transparency when things go wrong. I worked for many years as CTO of Symantec and was fortunate to have a great mentor, John Thompson, who was CEO of Symantec and then became the chair of Microsoft. And I'm reminded of him because all us old Symantec alumni just got together last week before RSA and had a big party. And John actually came and visited with us and spoke with us and reminded me of some of the things he taught. And one of the things he would teach us is when we have a problem that we have to address with one of our customers or a consumer, that's an opportunity. Don't look at it as a problem, look at it as an opportunity to shine, an opportunity to show them what we've made of. So that's particularly difficult if you've had a security incident to think that way. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we can do to show transparency and honesty when times are tough. That's actually when it really comes through. When times are great, it's a little easier, but when times are tough, like we've just been hit with some type of incident we've had to disclose. And then finally, resiliency. How well are we going to do if data becomes corrupted? If a particular location where our data is stored is unavailable or becomes lost, or even worse, hit with ransomware. There are ways that we can build in resiliency so we just keep running, even in the face of power outages and other types of things. Depending on the size of organization, and how much money we have to spend, how much resiliency we have may go up and down, but these are the components of what makes something trustworthy.
And inside of these components, there's actually these key domains that we'll be talking about. And Rob had mentioned around some of these, and particularly we focus right away here at RSA on security. But it's not just security. It's also about privacy. It's also about risk, right? These are all of the components that help make up trust. We need to have that assurance. We need to feel that we can trust that product and that we can rely on that product or we can rely on that service. That comes to us in many ways, and that's through assurance and also through understanding that their organization is being governed appropriately and being managed appropriately through the governance, and that the product is of quality. And that's really key as well, because like Rob said, you can have the best product, but if it isn't of good quality and it can't be used well, then you're breaking the trust of the organization.
So if we think about it, digital trust is the logical progression on something most of our companies have been embarked upon, which is digital transformation. It's part of that process. And customers are evolving in their expectations of what they expect from us as we move forward. If we want to stay competitive in today's world, we've got to earn those customers' trust and be able to do that. It's really a key portion of digital transformation. I would suggest if we're not figuring out how to incorporate digital trust as part of our digital transformation efforts, we're probably missing an opportunity, and there's a good chance we will not be as competitive as we think we are. May I suggest digital transformation with digital trust is very different than a simple digitization process, which is really just on the automation end of the equation, taking old processes and automating them. There's something far more interesting that we can do on this type of transformation. So this is really what drives customers to us. It's a huge factor in why they want to do business with us. It's going to take into consideration many different elements, as well as, for example, all the different stakeholders, whether that be consumers. And in the end, consumers are really important. Maybe our company, for example, provides platforms in a B2B fashion. The users in that fashion are consumers of what we're doing, or their customers, who might ultimately be consumers, are going to be relying on something that we're doing, and we might be a third party to somebody else. In fact, most of us usually are. We both have third-party risk we need to take care of as part of digital trust, and we probably are also a third party. And how can we make that easier for the parties that we serve to actually gain digital trust?
So it really starts with the top. And you've often heard many times that tone at the top. It's the commitment from the top that really have to drive that through the organization. Everyone has a responsibility for digital trust, but it's really the top that's going to set the culture, give the budget and the funding, and really get everyone involved and engaged in digital trust.
So we did a little bit of research on various things, Pam.
We did, and this is some of the research Rob will share in detail around the 2023. We also did one in 2022, so we have some continuity of this research, and the 2023 research will be available next 2 weeks from now, and you can go out to our website to download it. And really, we're seeing in the industry, digital trust is important. It's really becoming an essential component worldwide. And again, how do we implement digital trust? And Rob will walk through a few things.
Yeah, so some of the findings that we had from this, and there's some interesting implications that I saw here. You'll notice, not surprising, the top benefit was reputation, having a positive reputation. You know, the other items that are on here also very, very strong and quite important. You see, we had reputation right near the top, and the others are quite close to each other. And then that includes things like loyalty, more reliable data. We had faster innovation. And I'll tell you, as a business guy, I was kind of disappointed that we thought higher revenue was only 25%. In the end, we do things for more revenue. I don't care what kind of organization we are. All of those things, though, they will absolutely lead to higher revenue as a result. In fact, I would ask the flip side, if you don't do those things, how do you actually increase your revenue as you move forward? And I think we'll see revenues grow up. It's not surprising that the kind of respondents we talk to are mostly practitioners and managers in cybersecurity and privacy and risk and governance would think this way, but it will lead to higher revenue. There is a business case for this. And with a little bit of work, and we'll talk about how we can break down silos and help this happen, but with a little bit of work, we can help the people in our organization understand how what we are doing can actually lead to growth. And linking what we are doing to growth is absolutely essential for getting the budget and the resources and putting together the kind of teams that you need in order to do digital trust. So this one shows a few of the obstacles. So we saw the benefits, now we see the obstacles. I think very importantly, lack of staff and training is by far the top. And I'm not surprised there. So one quick thought about training and training budgets as we're heading into what I consider a little tougher economic times. The good news is studies are showing, and ours as well as IDC's and others are showing that in general security budgets are increasing faster than IT budgets. So that's kind of good news. The flip side is, yes, we are being asked more often to link those budgets to a direct business outcome, i.e. higher revenue, lower cost, something like that as a result of those. When we hit these kind of times, and oftentimes we're asked to cut personnel as one of the ways to lower costs, and I'm not just talking cybersecurity staff, you heard about all the other components that go into this, so there's other staff in the organization. Anybody that is in a hiring situation or in a budget situation, may I suggest a certain mindset that I learned through my career. Oftentimes, when times are tough and you have to cut budgets and as part of that, let people go, we don't like to let people go. And that's actually a good thing. You know, show me somebody who loves to let people go and I'll show you a bad leader. Nobody really likes to do that. It's uncomfortable. They're oftentimes colleagues, sometimes friends. We've learned a lot about them, and letting them go is extremely painful. So painful, we will do dumb things so that we can keep more of them on staff. And what do I mean by that? We will cut things like building skills and having enough budget for training. We will cut things for tools. And the result will be, good news, we were able to retain more of our staff. Bad news, they're probably not going to be able to do their jobs. And it doesn't take long before they get discouraged, and the best people tend to leave. A better approach, painful as it is, and I would encourage everybody to do this, there's a certain amount of money that is needed per employee for tools and training. By definition, make sure you keep that amount of money in your budget, argue for it if you're not the budget owner. If you are the budget owner, manage it, and instead cut a little deeper in the number of people so that what's left can actually do their jobs, have an enjoyable experience, and be excited about working for your company. When we come to digital trust, this is going to be really key.
So here was an interesting stat for me, is that 76% of the people really think digital trust is important, but only 12% of the people actually do something about it. So, they really feel challenged. And in order to really harness this opportunity, we really need to take the steps to prioritize the different aspects of digital trust, but most importantly, we need to collaborate. Digital trust cannot be done in a vacuum. As we talked about earlier, it can't be just a cyber event or a privacy event or a legal event. It has to come together under that umbrella with a lot of cross-collaboration. And again, I talked about we're going to be releasing our study for 2023, but we are also going to be releasing a framework later this year that will help you build digital trust in your organization. And it will have the different KPIs and KRIs that you need to enable digital trust successfully in your organization.
So we also asked in our state of privacy research that is now out and available on ISACA's website, and we asked about privacy breaches. And we had 10% that said they did have a privacy breach in the last 12 months. Most said no. We had 20% who said don't know, and we had 10 who said prefer not to answer. So certainly there's been quite a bit happening there. Notice the word material breach, and that's kind of lined up with the new SEC rules. So if any of you who work for public companies, the new SEC rules coming out, I think they're just about to go into enforcement, is that you have to publicize your breach, give notification of your breach publicly within 4 days of when you determine that it is material. So we talked earlier about what do you do during tough times, and when an incident happens, that's pretty fast. There is a little bit of a fudge, though, when we determine it's material. So part of having good digital trust is now going to be a good process for determining materiality. It's going to be really ugly if we announce the breach and then later on it's determined we knew it was material months earlier while we were still investigating it. So this is going to be a tough issue. We'll talk more about who needs to be on the cross-functional team. Clearly, legal is going to need to be part of that effort as we try to build digital trust. Now, the other is we look at our ability to ensure privacy. We have almost 39% that are either completely confident or very confident. But that would suggest we still have a ways to go in becoming more confident about our privacy. And there are new rules and regulations coming out about what that means. I just mentioned one with the SEC. We've been dealing with things like GDPR and HIPAA. So the bar keeps moving. So it's actually hard to catch up. But I would suggest when customers trust us with their data, and we can actually do surveys and see if customers feel comfortable trusting us with their data and the way that we're handling it, and do we even check? How many of us actually know how customers feel about us having their data? Once we feel that they are confident with us, think of almost a net promoter score around that particular issue, then I think we know we're arriving a little closer to being trustworthy when it comes to data.
And on this slide, there are going to be 5 key takeaways, and Rob, if you want to just build them all out.
Oh,
the
yes.
thing to remember mostly is that this is a journey. This is a place to start and to continue to move. This is not going to be a light switch effect that everybody gets together and then the next thing you know, you have digital trust. It is a journey. And then one of the key takeaways that you see on this slide that I want to mention in here is when you get to looking at measuring your critical maturity. Maturity is not just your organization. And I think that's a key point, right? Maturity is also your supply chain, the third-party vendors that you work with. How do you know that they're doing their due diligence or they're a trustworthy organization because they feed directly into your organization? So as you think about these 5 key takeaways, really make sure that you're also considering your vendor and your supply chain in the process as well.
So I'm excited we're going to be talking about a digital trust ecosystem framework. And this is something that ISACA has come out with. We're getting close to actually publishing it. We've got some preview materials that are now available. It does take time whenever an association works hard on a new framework, and we've done many before. So think of things like COBIT, and we own the CMMI Capability Maturity Model Institute. So many of you are probably familiar with capability maturity models. We just came out with a new version of that, CMMI version 3. We're pretty familiar as an association, which, by the way, is really people like you who figure this out. It's the community. In fact, it's really great because you get a chance for people who will often be competitors to collaborate on something that's actually important for the industry. And I think this is going to be a very important framework because it's going to start tying in what it actually takes to have a digital trust ecosystem and what are the elements that go into it. And you can see here there are going to be 4 nodes: people, process, technology. We're all really familiar with that. But as our experts, people like you all around the world, collaborated on this, they also felt it was important to talk about organization. Structure matters. And so that's actually one of the nodes as well. And then it crosses 6 domains. And you look at these, and these are way more than just technical things and security things. Things like culture, emergence, human factors, enabling and support, direct and monitor, and yes, one of my favorites, architecture, how we put all of this together. So there'll be more and more information that'll be coming out, particularly as we head into the fall on this, and something we're really excited about. And it is an ecosystem. It has to be something that others can actually connect into.
And so part of it is, Rob mentioned that we have this structure, this framework. We're also bringing a structured approach. ISACA is good at this, as Rob mentioned. We built COBIT, we built the CMMI. We have these models from the past to rely on that we can now help you enable a good framework or a good structure for your organization. And one of the things you do is each of those domains Rob mentioned, right? We're going to take one of those domains and put it through this process, put it through this structure, right? And these structure, again, happens to have the KPI, the key performance indicators of whether or not things are working or not working, certainly key risk indicators along with the controls. So really take a look for this framework that'll be coming out later in the year that'll help you really enable digital trust in your organization. And you can find a lot of these resources on the ISACA website. So you'll see the research will be coming out, like I said, in a couple of weeks. But also the framework will be available there, so please be sure to check out our website.
Yeah, and we should mention as well, ISACA never likes to do things in a vacuum. There are some great standards and things that we can connect to, so this will map to others that we are used to, like NIST, ISO 27001. Digital trust is more than just those, so they're going to be key ingredients. But by following this, you'll have those and see exactly how it maps to those as well and how they can actually click in as well. So now we'd like to talk a little bit about how do you actually get this done in an organization. There are often silos in organizations, and there's kind of a gap as well, as Pam was indicating. There's not a lot of confidence that we're actually ready to tackle digital trust. We have a lot of the pieces in organizations, and those pieces tend to be in silos, and they don't always work together really well. So we're going to talk about how we eliminate those silos, how we can actually break them down and make things happen. And this is, feel free to ask questions during this part. Both Pam and I have a fair amount of experience in leading cross-functional teams and kind of things we've learned that work and don't work along this way. But as we're doing this, there's various components that need to be involved. Yes, of course, cybersecurity is a key part. But we also need things like IT strategy and governance, risk management, assurance. Sometimes we call it IT audit is key. Otherwise, we're just claiming things without any way to check it, including external audits oftentimes need to be done. Oftentimes an appraisal needs to be done by an outside party. And we do those kind of things today. We do things like SOC 2 and other things. There's going to be more that has to be done around digital trust, so it's not just claims, but something that's actually verified. So we need those kind of people involved, which brings in compliance. So compliance, comply with certain standards, resilience, and other roles that might need to be involved, including things that might not be in IT, like legal or customer experience. How do we know we have great quality and actually delights people? Because you can't be trustworthy if it's actually not fun to use, your product or your service. So it really can't be accomplished in a silo. So by definition, unless you just happen to have a weird organization that I haven't seen today that actually has a digital trust group with all these functions under it, which I am not suggesting is a good idea. Many times in order to get things done, we think we have to reorg the organization to get something done. It's still the same people, you just rearrange the deck chairs. And I would suggest if we're going to do something here, we really need to get good at cross-functional teams.
So like Rob was saying, cross-functional teams are not just in IT. They have to go across the organization. And one of the models that's available to us, and one of the models I like to use, is in the DevOps space. And in the DevOps, you have your communities of practices and your centers of excellence. And this is where you can start to bring the people together to start to understand the problem. And here's the trick. It's not just about agreeing that we all have a problem and then everybody going away into their own separate organizations. It's really coming together to first agree on the problem. What really is the problem? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are we actually talking about? And then try to have that woven throughout your organization. One of the things we did as a leadership team in my organization, and I would also ask maybe you try, we actually tried our own product. We actually tried to use it. I was a little surprised. I thought it was a little bit different than my experience of it. And so, you know, you have demo teams, you have demonstration environments. Go and try to use your product. What's your experience of the product? How does that align to what you believe the problems are? And that's where you start to bring people together to really then say, okay, what is the problem that we need to solve? How do we bring these folks together and then to move forward? And it really has to be across the organization. As a leadership team, it wasn't just the IT folks who did this. It was across the organization. And we all kind of had this, aha moment, like, oh, there are things that we could do better and how we can do them better. So really bringing that cross-functional team together to have that conversation.
Yeah, as part of that, and Pam mentioned DevOps, and I've spent much of my career leading or developing software, so DevOps is kind of near and dear to my heart. I prefer DevSecOps in this day and age where we have security in there as well. That integrating with that is also quite important. So the VP of engineering, heads of development, the CTO office often need to be part of this area as well and part of the cross-functional team. It might be a physical product that we're building as well that needs to be tied in. So engineering becomes quite important. Risk management becomes important. And as we think about privacy, it's more than just the legal aspect. Legal definitely needs to be brought in, but even things we wouldn't think of like customer experience needs to be brought in. What is the customer experience? Is it a way that reinforces how we take privacy seriously and that we've done privacy by design? As we tie in cybersecurity and the architecture that we use, does it reinforce that we've done security by design and it's built in and not bolted on afterwards? So there are important aspects to really engendering digital trust that we need to think through, as well as how we're going to measure success. So as we put a cross-functional team, we'll talk a minute about like who leads it. Maybe it's you. We need to also have a way that we know when are we being successful? What are the KPIs? What are the measurements that says that we're being successful? Almost certainly has to include some type of feedback from the end users of our systems so that we actually know how they feel about our digital trust and where we're at in that model.
So customers need to be engaged in the process as well. And as I talked about, looking at how to use the communities of practice and certainly the centers of excellence, you can engage customers in your conversation as well and have them be part of the process. And usually what you do is identify a place where there might be an opportunity and you bring it to people's attention. And one of the ways that we'll dig into just a little bit, but one way to kind of build your leadership skills is to actually lead that cross-functional team. And so when you build the cross-functional team and you get everyone together, the first thing is to, again, identify the problem. Why are you there? And I've worked with many of our groups, different groups that have these, and first thing I do is build out a charter. Why are we there? What are we trying to do? What's the goals? And every year we'll work together, and we're going to solve 3 things, right? I'm not going to try to boil the ocean, and we work to look for 3 goals. And these are the 3 goals that kind of what Rob talked about, how are we going to feel like success? Because a lot of people are going to do this in addition to their day job. And so how are they going to get recognized for that work in addition to what they're supposed to be doing? But really by measuring the accomplishments that you have through these goals that you've agreed on, through the charter that gets built as to like why you're there. And so there's different methods as to what you can use. One of them is the hats. I forgot how many hats, but you go through and you kind of say, everybody is now going to focus on one thing and we're going to talk about this one thing. Try not to get people to try to solve immediately. Focus right away. What is this one thing and how do we get to it? And when that conversation is exhausted, move on to the second thing and have everybody talk about it. Not have people talk about, how to solve this, or I think this is, and they'll be like bringing up problems, adjacent problems, other types, bring them back into the conversation. Focus them on the topic at hand so that you can really iron out what is it that you want to address and how you're going to impact your organization.
Yeah, I really like that. Actually, that's a strategy I've used many times. So you can do it quite simply. Hey, we're just going to talk about the pros, and we're going to talk about the cons. Or we're just going to talk about the problem. And that actually could be a short session where, frankly, we're all getting out our complaints about how things are currently and working poorly, as is often the case, and get that out on the table. Then maybe we move on to a discussion at the very end about how we might solve it. So this idea of getting aligned thinking is really powerful. So one of the challenges with cross-functional teams is the meetings are often all over the place, and you actually don't get to a conclusion. The other problem is you get to the conclusion too quick, and you haven't actually explored the topic enough. And so there's a knack for what I like to call a diverging discussion, where we're having all ideas are on the table, all ideas are welcome, we're practicing active listening, where people who don't agree with each other, if you're the leader, you have to kind of act like the moderator oftentimes, are being heard and know that they're being heard. So sometimes you're having people say in their own words what they just heard, even though they disagree, so you can be sure they understand, because a lot of times they don't, and that's why they're disagreeing. A lot of arguments are 2 people not actually understanding each other. Sometimes there really is an area of disagreement, and simply agreeing on what the area of disagreement is huge. And defining it precisely, here's where we don't agree, and you can have a discussion about how we might resolve that disagreement, as opposed to let's resolve it right now and decide who's right and who's wrong. So there's a lot of leadership talents that come into this and are really important. Now, Pam kind of mentioned you might want to be the leader of the cross-functional team, and I'd like you to think about that. Digital trust is going to be an opportunity. There will be people who step up and lead cross-functional teams. And when you bring up the idea of digital trust, if you just immediately raise it up the management chain in your organization, be prepared that you might be the one that gets asked to do it, because people are going to assume, I certainly did when I was CEO and somebody brought an idea like this to me, that the one who's bringing it to me is really anxious to get it done, and if I believed in it, I might tap them to actually lead the team. If you're not the one who wants to lead the team, but you think it needs to get done, may I suggest, think in your organization, who do you think would be really good at leading that team? convince them and get them to bring it up the management chain, because they'll probably be the ones asked. The worst thing is to be tapped and volunteered to lead a cross-functional team that you have no interest in. I've had that happen in my career. It's not fun. You kind of drag your way through it, and I can tell you those teams that I was forced to lead versus I was passionate about leading, those teams that I was forced to lead, I did not do as well. And I think that's true of all of us. So one of the key things is figure out who needs to be the leader. And an organic effort versus a tops-down effort is okay when it comes to cross-functional teams. It might be the way we truly are able to get it done. Now, the customer side is really important, and working with customers are key. We talked about the importance of honesty and transparency. And one of the big things is when things go wrong. Remember I said that's opportunity. It's an opportunity to show our true character and culture as an organization. Now, I don't know about you, but most of us, I guess, have probably been affected by someone in our lives, or perhaps ourselves, who has had cancer. And anybody who's been through those experiences will tell you the worst part is waiting for the test results. Particularly when you're hoping you're in a remission or you've been in remission, that period of uncertainty and waiting for the answer is the worst. In many cases, I've heard people say that were close to me, just give me the bad news and get it over with. I'm already pretty sure it's bad news, just give it to me. And they're actually assuming in many cases the news is probably worse than what it actually ends up being. So uncertainty is the enemy of crisp communication with our customers. Wherever we can alleviate the uncertainty, even if it's telling them bad news, is going to help us with honesty and transparency. So kind of keep that in mind. Work with communication specialists as part of this team. Handling incidents and a good incident management process is crucial to digital trust, because you can work for years to build it up. And then one incident handled poorly can destroy the trust that they have in your organization, and it will take years to get it back. Handling that incident well, you're still going to take some heat for it. But you're better off if people are at least saying, you know, I was unhappy that it actually happened. They were open, they were honest with me, they helped me figure out how I as a customer was affected, and they helped me figure out what I could do about it. And it was very clear and crisp. Shareholders and others of the organization knew exactly what was going on. So this is going to require a cross-functional team, as we said before. There may be different parts to this as we think about it and how they can engage, you know, digitally, how they can engage with as a team.
And so one of the things, just to kind of give you some ideas and some takeaways, one of the things that I started to do is all of a sudden I was getting inundated. Hey, there's this 0 day. What are you doing about it? You know, so all of a sudden I had to flip the narrative. And I started to say, I understand there's a 0 day here. I wanted to reach out and let you know we're not impacted. And to start being proactive in the communication. Maybe we were impacted, and I would have to also disclose that as well, and here's what we're doing about it. But having that conversation up front, getting ahead of it with our customer success leaders and getting ahead with our different colleagues and different stakeholders is really where it made the difference. And now people will be like, okay, I know you got this under control. They take a deep breath. They may not, as Rob said, be always happy with the news. They may not always like what they hear, but they know that you're on top of it, and they have now, you know, you've endured their trust even more because they know you're not trying to just ignore an issue or hope that it goes away.
So let's talk a little bit about how we could build our leadership skills so that we're better placed to lead a cross-functional team. And as I said, leading a cross-functional team is a tremendous career opportunity. And I often suggest when people come to me and say, you know, there's been all these changes in the organization, or I think we should do X, as we should look for vacuums in our organization and fill them. If you really want to move along in your career, look for the opportunity. Rather than just saying, I wish somebody would do X, ask yourself, should I? take the lead and figure out how to do that. Particularly when people have been let go, turnover, mergers and acquisitions, times of turmoil. Our natural inclination, and many of us are going through those things now, what's our natural inclination? Hunker down, keep my head low, and that way it won't get chopped off. If I think of the times that I was able to make significant steps forward in my career, it's when I resisted that temptation to hunker down and avoid getting my head chopped off and actually stuck it out and looked at what the vacuums were and figured out how to fill it and led cross-functional teams. So, for example, when my company, which was a public company, got acquired by Symantec, I volunteered to lead the cross-functional team to figure out what we should do on product integration, which means I had to go learn a lot of products I didn't know. But it also meant I got to meet everybody that had anything to do with product and technology and get to know everybody. And so that knowledge put me in a good place as we were still working towards closing the merger. It was public, so I was able to talk to a lot of different people, but it hadn't closed yet. And interesting enough, when the merger closed 2 weeks later, the CEO decided to let the CTO go, and I found myself as the new CTO. If I had not stepped up and put myself in a difficult situation, and by the way, I had no idea if I was going to survive that acquisition. None whatsoever. I just felt like if I did all I could to try to make the merger successful and figure out what the integration path and the messaging and everything else would be with many different people, good things would happen. I had no idea that would happen, actually. It was not even in my mind whatsoever. It was a wonderful thing that it did. That's what happens when you lead cross-functional teams. If you do well, usually, and this is important, if you're working for good leaders, particularly a good CEO, which I was, good things can happen. If you're working for bad leaders and a bad CEO, may I suggest you have one course of action that is really the right one to take? It's painful, leave. Life is too short. Don't stay. Your cross-functional teams aren't going to work. Your opportunity to excel with your leadership skills and development, none of those are going to work if you're starting with somebody that's difficult. So think of that, have a vacuum. So one other piece of advice. Communication skills and ability to persuade and ability to have a dialogue are important if you're going to lead a cross-functional team. That obviously includes being able to present, because guess who's going to present to the senior leadership? Oftentimes at a large organization, there's this C-suite steering committee for your effort. They're not going to do any of the work. They will apply budget for the cross-functional team, and they're going to review what you're doing. You're going to have to present to them. If you can't persuade them, you're not going very far. So if you're not comfortable presenting, just ask yourself, would you switch places right now with us up on the stage? Not right now, but given a little bit of time to prepare, a couple of days, would you be comfortable? If the answer is yes, you're in good shape. If the answer is no, how will you get there? And put a plan together. And you can talk with others in your organization who are good at it, or friends that you know who are good at it, and get advice. But you have to have that skill to be a cross-functional leader. And then you have to be able to communicate, particularly with your own team, and let them talk. You can't force the dialogue. If you as the leader force the direction, it's not going to work. It's a cross-functional team. You have to let people have their say and arrive together at the conclusion.
And I just want to add a little bit on to what Rob just said. In terms of being able to present, each of us are involved in different associations. Take opportunities to present in your local association. Give a presentation, give a talk about something that you're familiar with and passionate about. Although I'm not here to represent another organization, I would say Toastmasters is an awesome organization to really start to learn the skills that you need to feel comfortable to present in front of large audiences or even small audiences.
Yeah. If you take nothing else away today, and people come up to you all the time and say, Rob, you seem to have had a really great career. I want to do some similar things in my career. What's the one thing I could do? If you are not comfortable presenting, get comfortable presenting. Now, you'll probably be surprised, but as a kid, I was very shy. I was shy in high school. The idea of getting up in front of people and presenting absolutely terrified me. And you may be in the same category. As Pam just said, and most people are, by the way. Most of us are afraid of it. As Pam just said, there are organizations like Toastmasters and others that can help you get past that and make it a friendly environment and make it so you're actually very comfortable. Persuasion, presenting skills, actually how you put things together, going to be critical to your career. I don't care who you are or what you're doing. It is what will let you move forward, building those communication skills and knowing how to do it well. So, as you leave here today, I think there's some things that you can do as a takeaway. One, we do have a state of digital trust research that's coming out in May. It's 9th of May, I guess that's just about 2 weeks from today. And then also think about what you can do to identify the silos in your organization in which your team operates and connect with other teams. Think about if you were to become and have digital trust, who would the teams be? What are some early ones? Maybe initially it's an exploratory one, particularly if it's a large organization. Maybe you have a cross-functional team that's going to explore the topic and come up with recommendations of how to put together a cross-functional team. It's okay. If it takes you multiple phases, it's okay. The trick is to figure out how to get from here to there. It's a journey. It's taking the right steps along the way. You don't just quickly arrive at the conclusion where suddenly, and I'll use a simple example, when we buy things online, how many of us will deliberately go to certain companies like Amazon and pay more because you trust them? The package will arrive. If it's screwed up, you can return it. And though it can be a little difficult, you can actually get somebody on the phone. And because of all of those things, you're probably more likely to pay more and go with them. I would suggest, while we all have our complaints with big companies, I would suggest they've earned a certain amount of trust, and it's one of the reasons they keep growing in terms of market share relative to that. What can we do to move our companies forward so we're kind of like that in people's minds? So we're going to come out with the Digital Trust Ecosystem Framework, and you can start exploring some of the preview things that we have, and as we come out with more, and you'll hear more, these things do take time. Why? Because they need to be peer-reviewed. We've had betas that are out now and being peer-reviewed, and then you need to add on the details for that. And we'd rather not just keep it in silence, because frankly, rumor would get out. We have so many people, hundreds and hundreds of people working on this, volunteers around the globe, that word would get out anyway. So we'd rather let you know, and if you want to get engaged and be part of it, just contact us. You can volunteer too. Pam.
So the other thing I want you to really do is take kind of an inventory. Look at your own personal skills. Where are the things that you're strong at? Where are the things that you have opportunities? And create that personal plan for yourself. How are you going to become that cross-functional leader in your organization? Really dig in a little bit and say, wow, I need some opportunities in speaking, or I need to get to know other people in the organization because I'm not really sure what other folks are doing. And so that you can start to engage your organization and build digital trust in your organization, which ultimately, as we talked about way back in the beginning, does lead to higher revenue. Because when you have good reputation, and you have that reputation that Rob just talked about, you go to Amazon. Why? Because you trust it. And that is going to generate the revenues of the organization.
Great. Well, we have time for just one or two questions. Any questions?
Yes,
please. The mics are right here.
Hello. Very nice presentation. I have one question that now with emerging technologies like blockchain and distributed ledger, they are talking about trustless ecosystem. And with data, being distributed in various data centers across different nodes, so how much is it difficult to implement this framework? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. So emerging technologies are near and dear to my heart, which I spent most of my career on. And definitely things like blockchain, I would suggest even more so AI. Think about digital trust and AI, really critical that experts be included in that area. So that having technical people as part of the cross-functional team that understand those is going to be very important, and to take those into consideration. If you're going to use ChatGPT, think about what that might help your digital trust or hurt it. Okay, one last question, and then we'll be done.
Hi, thank you. What do you think about using tabletop exercises and get the stakeholders involved in doing, using that and for tabletop exercises?
I'm not sure I heard the whole question.
Tabletop exercises.
Oh, tabletop exercises. Boy, that's like critical. Especially in a cross-functional group, because I would say one of the things that happens in a crisis is people always want to help. Everybody wants to help. The problem is everybody can't help, and somebody may be working on a piece of the incident or a piece of it and maybe giving only a portion from a communications perspective. So really when you do a tabletop is to really try to simulate that real crisis and to really say, okay, this is a person who's running communications, because what's going to happen even in my organization or in your organization is the people that you know are going to call you and say, what's going on, right? And you're going to give them a piece of information that may then kind of get spread a little bit differently, but you want everyone at the table, because when it comes to a tabletop, it's not just about bringing the services back up or doing, bringing the machinery back up or anything like that. It's really about how do you communicate that. You need your customer service team engaged. You may have contractual obligations that you have to adhere to. So it's very important to make sure that they're all together when you do that tabletop. Yep, thanks for that question.
Thank you, great question, and really helpful, especially when you hit the incident management end of the equation. Thank you, everybody, and please do look at applying these learnings. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.